It's time for the Pain Points podcast again, and another expert guest to help us tackle the problems of working life. Maybe not all of them, unless we get on very well in the next half hour, but enough of the problems to make an improvement to the way things go for all of us at work. I'm Jonathan Hancock, and my guest today is the CEO of a pretty well-known company. He's passionate about helping people to solve problems and overcome challenges in their working lives, which is very good for us. And in his new book, he focuses on the importance of investing in talent to help employees do better and be happier, but not necessarily to keep them forever. Many companies are wailing about this talent retention problem, but my guest today thinks they may be looking at this the wrong way. So let's meet him and tackle employee development and talent management together. This is Pain Points. Why do the best people keep leaving? And welcome to Pain Points to Mark Peters, who is CEO of Butterball Farms, Inc., author of The Retention Trap, Stop Measuring Turnover, Start Measuring Talent Investment. And he is our guest today. Mark, it's great to have you here. Welcome to Pain Points.
Jonathan, thank you very much. I'm very pleased to be broadcasting in a different country. It's kind of a privilege for me. So.
Well, you've got the UK at your disposal and the world. We broadcast to the world, so you can have it all today.
Fantastic.
And you've got a lot to say. It's a fantastic book, and I'm really looking forward to hearing your take on this, because it is an issue that we hear lots of people are grappling with. First of all, I wonder, maybe you've solved it all, because I see that Butterball Farms has been recognised as one of the best and brightest companies to work for. So does that mean you've solved this talent development problem and you're just going to tell us how you did it?
Yeah, we're the only company in the world that's actually solved it.
Good, you're the right man to talk to.
I wish. I don't think you ever solve it completely. You got to keep working at it. It's a long game, and there's so many changes, and the changes keep coming faster and faster, whether it's technology and the way people learn and whatever education or skills training programs are coming out of. It really requires us to be more adaptive as employers. I sort of like to frame this conversation. Sometimes it can come off as being like employers don't get it, or companies really have to start doing this, and leaders need to understand these things. And the way I kind of like to frame it is, most of us don't get into our businesses to solve people problems. We solve some other problem in the marketplace, product, solution, software platform, whatever it is. And we end up finding out there's a market for it, and we build a business, and then we have to hire people. And, all of a sudden we've got problems we never imagined we would have.
That's true, actually. We often don't think of things like that. You go into it not really as a people business. You go into it as a widget business or a butter business or whatever sort of business, and you end up with a lot of people on your hands.
Yeah, and I think that in today's world, to be a really good employer, you have to learn the people, how to engage with your employees, and you've got to build a competency around it. I have the opportunity to coach a couple of startup businesses, and, you wouldn't talk to any successful business owner or leader and have them say, I don't need to know anything about the financials. Like, I don't need to know an income statement. I don't need to know a balance sheet. Because at some point you got to know that stuff. You got to know where the money goes and all the rest of it. But there doesn't seem to be the same urgency about understanding how to be really good with people in your organization.
Yes.
I think that for survival in today's world and beyond, it's going to be as important a competency as learning about your financial statements.
And it requires, I suppose, different lenses, because you've got the here and now and all of the immediate problems. And I guess great companies are looking after people today, but you're also asking people to have this much longer term view as well. Sure. And somehow also think about where these people and the people that come after them are going to be in a year, 5 years, 10 years.
Yeah. And I think that's part of the people equation, or the talent equation, if you will, is we all have dreams and aspirations. Everybody that comes to work for us does. So we have this opportunity to dig into that a little bit and inquire, like, where do you want to go? How can we invest in that with you? I do think that one of the maybe innovative, or what I'm sort of calling a paradigm shift or a mindset shift for people who run businesses, is to think about it beyond just their own business. Yes. There's this formula like, hey, I'll send you to school or I'll give you additional training beyond just what you need for your job if you agree to stay 2 more years. It's sort of like I don't want to let go of that money to teach you something that once you learn it, you might leave, because then I've lost that investment. What the interesting thing to me is we don't think about that way with like health insurance. We say, well, if you stay with us for 5 years, we're going to offer you these benefits. Yes. And I really think that education and development and career development are going to be the next sort of future benefit packages.
Okay.
I think the way that the world of demographics are going, people are going to get to ask for that. What are you going to do for my development? What are you going to do for my ongoing career path?
And our research suggests they're asking about that more and more, that the new hires are likely to look for companies that are going to give them this kind of development, and they're demanding it more and more.
Right. And that's where I think, Jonathan, I think that's where my book is kind of important, especially for small to mid-market employers, because the problem we have, even if we are willing to make the investment in somebody's education, knowing that they're probably going to leave. And I've done this a few times. I've helped some people get MBAs and then they go get much better jobs at other companies, which is great. I always celebrate that. But what I wish I'd been able to do is be more intentional. And so part of what I'm proposing in this book is that as small to mid-market employers, we think about building a network of employers. So again, think of a person coming into my finance team, and I've got 3 or 4 people, and I've got a director of finance who probably isn't going anywhere because we've got him on an internal growth path. So some of the folks under him may decide that they're ready to take a director of finance position with another company. I would love to have 3 or 4 partner companies that person could go to. So building a network of employers that you could offer up as a career path, especially as a talent attraction methodology, becomes a really interesting way to think about your enterprise. And I think if as small to mid-market companies, if we want to hire the quality talent that we need to do what I call like one of one jobs or one of 2 jobs that a lot of us have, we're going to have to be able to demonstrate we're thinking about their career path.
Yes. Yeah, and you can see a lot in that for everyone involved if you were to develop that kind of network, because there'd be this pool of talent. It wouldn't be a kind of battle for the best talent. You'd be working together and people would learn different things from different people and grow, and everybody would benefit. But I suppose you do have to get past that rivalry thing and that battle for talent, or the way some people see it as having to somehow secretly get the best talent and then keep them in your place.
I know all of the lexicon around protecting talent or poaching talent, or what I call the victim language when people leave. And the fact that it's never a comfortable conversation for someone to go to their boss and say, hey, you know what, I don't really like working here anymore, and I think it's time for me to go find another job. I mean, most people get walked out when they say stuff like that. Because like, how do we make that a safe conversation? Like, wouldn't it be great if you could say, wow, so well, what are you thinking you want to do? And I've got like 6 partners that I could introduce you to. And then instead of 2 weeks notice, maybe you get 6 months, and you can say, you know what, I really would love to help you on that development path. And would you be willing to help us backfill your position? Yes. Like, you know it better than anybody else. What are the benefits if we de-risk all that stuff in our organizations? And I think it's huge.
Yeah, it creates a much stronger talent base. Yeah. You're not going to be losing people and then all of their knowledge all of a sudden.
Which happens all the time to small and mid-market companies.
Yes.
All the time.
Yes. So I suppose a few things have to happen for this to work. One key thing, it seems to me, is you've got to know where your people are at in terms of their learning and development.
Right.
And I think that is often missing.
Right. I wrote a previous book called The Source, which was about getting employees stabilized. And, part of that book was getting curious about the backstory of the people that work for you. In this book, it's really getting curious about where they want to go, what's next in their life. I mean, we often have like, hey, it would be great if you applied for this job within our company, and here's what you need to get ready for that. But that's all about what we need as a company, and it may or may not match what the individual needs, right? And I think you get a much higher level of engagement when you're more curious about what the individual wants to do.
Yes. And I suppose you have to be fairly accurate on both sides about what their level of ability and experience is at the moment, because people might come to you saying, I want to move on to this and I've got these huge ambitions. And you might think they're not really ready for that, but they could be if they had this training package or program or whatever.
Right.
So how do you get that more accurate on both sides so people really are true about where they're at right now with their development?
Well, I love that question. And you're right. Part of it is, what is the skill set that somebody has in a particular role? And then what are some of the soft skills and what are the assessments we're going to use to get at those competencies? And then what do they need to have in the roles that we're the first set of roles we're going to try to open up in the network. Why I think this is so perfect an opportunity in time to do this is the software platforms that are out there that allow us to do those things and be able to translate our company-specific language around jobs to more agreed upon skill sets that transfer from company to company. The software platforms that are out there are so much easier to work with and make this a much more easier path than it was. We tried to do this 15 years ago and we were mapping all these things by hand and it was incredibly complex. But the tools that we have at our disposal today to do this make it much easier. And I'm really excited about that. And this is a long game.
Yes.
I'm not suggesting that any of this is easy, but as entrepreneurs in the system, we're problem solvers. This is stuff that we can solve. And I think that those of us that figure this out are going to be the employers of choice.
Yes. And it sounds like you're very willing to learn as you go along through this process. What would you say are the best nuggets of learning you've got to share with us, whether they're in the book or still in your head from what you've gone through? What can we learn from what Mark Peters has maybe failed at so far when he's tried to do this?
Oh, Lord. I'll give you a couple. So since the book launch, one of my learnings is how receptive people have been. This has been a tough conversation for me for 10 years. And I sort of get like, well, that's kind of nice, but I'm never going to do that.
Yes, it's too risky.
I think the market is changing enough. We're seeing demand for talent show up in places that it hasn't shown up before. So I think employers are more interested in it. I guess one of my learnings just in the last few months is there's a definite receptiveness to figuring this out and a willingness to work with employers, like employer to employer, which is not a gear most of us are very good at. I think one of the things that I've not done a great job at is really building the case to inspire other employers to change the way they think around talent. And I'm trying to hone that message almost daily with every conversation I have, getting this panel together. One of the things that came out of the work we were doing this week is we have to understand where this work creates value in this talent system and then who's going to pay for it, because it's not free. What's the return on investment? So in our work group this week, if I can get somebody to stay with my company for like 2 years in an entry-level range job, who would more than likely leave our company and go to another entry-level wage job for 10 cents more or nothing that would be a dramatic change for them. But if I can keep them longer during the education process, there's probably a return of value to me of something. So we're trying to solve for what does that value creation look like in each of our companies, and how can we measure it? Because if we can't measure it, it's going to be really hard to make a case for companies to pick this kind of work up.
It's interesting how often the case is that we seem to measure the easy things.
Oh, yeah.
It's easy to measure turnover, isn't it? It's usually easy to measure things like how long a person has stayed at a company. And often that is held up as an example of how good a company is.
Right.
You're saying, actually, look at it the other way around. And maybe you don't want people staying there for decades.
Right. Well, it's interesting because one of the things that I've learned is that most employers, they don't know what their cost of turnover is. Even if it's relatively low, and I sort of referred to the source a couple of times, when we started that organization in 2003, and we had agreement among the founding companies that the cost of turnover was $3,200 per event for somebody who was like a 90-day employee or less.
Yes.
That number then drove what ended up being a return on investment of about 200% in that work.
Wow.
Yeah, it's been phenomenal. We've got 23 years of data now. It's pretty amazing. But I think there's the same kind of value creation in this kind of work. The question is, where is it and how do you get agreement around what those numbers are? Mm. Because at some point, somebody's going to have to put some money in.
Yes.
Because it doesn't happen for free.
Yes. But it sounds like you have got evidence, even just from your own company, of the benefits of this. And the book is making a pretty powerful case for this as well. So you're looking at it at lots of different levels, whether it's the happiness, the employability of a company, the staff, the love of a place. You're getting all of that at one level. You're also getting the measurement in terms of the efficiency and the overall profitability, the bottom line.
There's a story in the book about a lady that basically started her working life with our company. I mean, she's gone on now. She runs like the HR department for North America for a global company based in France. She was the first person she's a Hispanic background, first person in her family to get a college degree and then a master's degree and then a PhD, and she had 50 some nephews and nieces, and it has inspired a number of them to go on and get college degrees and master's degrees. And, that value didn't come back to my company, but it certainly came back to our community in West Michigan. Mm-hmm. And it came back to her and her family. Sometimes you've got to think about building human capital beyond just financial capital. And that's good for all of us. It makes our companies more resilient. It makes our people more resilient. It makes our communities more resilient.
Yes. I
want to put some numbers to it because I think they're significant. I think that value creation in our talent system it's huge. The other thing that I've learned is employers, if you go and ask employers, and I'd be, it probably won't happen, but I'd be fascinated if we did a poll of all your listeners and said, how many of you who are, running or managing an enterprise would consider yourself educators? Mm. And we don't think of ourselves as educators, but we teach people every day. Yes. Every time we get new technology, new software, new regulations, new anything, we're constantly teaching people the latest things we need to run our enterprises. And if we do it well, we have better customer service, better, order fill rates, better engagement from the people that work for us. We're always doing the education piece. So how do we click that 3 to 6 degrees of additional intentionality to a little bit more development for the individual and not just for the enterprise? But we already know the gear. Yes. We already know how to educate. That's not a new competency for it. It just is a little slightly different application for it.
Yes. Yeah, so you're trying to shift that dial a bit for employers to think of themselves as that kind of educator. What about the individuals? Do they need to shift their thinking so that they realize that they're learners more, even when they've finished their formal education? Yeah. They should still be seeing themselves as learners.
John, that's a great question. I think we have to figure out what we can control for and what we can't control for. I've got some people that work in my plant. They're super happy doing that. They're going to do that job or a job like that probably till they die. And you can build the framework and you can offer them the opportunity and they're perfectly content doing what they do. And that's okay. I think that's great. What we get to do is build the framework and make the offerings. And we actually can do that. We can do that so it's available and it's predictable and it's repeatable.
Yes.
You can't force somebody to do it. I think the flip side of that is, based on the changes of technology and whatnot, if individuals don't want to take advantage of that additional training and learning, they also have to be aware that with technology shifts, they may be endangering their own employability. Mm-hmm. We are seeing job destruction and, shifts in where we're applying skill sets in the workforce at a rate we've never seen it before. So I think for individuals, if they're not somewhat aware of the risk of not taking advantage of it, it could be problematic for them.
Yes. Yes, and I wonder what the role of their managers, their line managers is in this. We talk to a lot of managers on this podcast, and I guess sometimes, a lot of the time, they're probably very rushed and they've got a lot of things on their plate and they're trying to get people to do stuff to please the people managing them.
Right.
So where do they find the time and inspiration and get that value that you're talking about and see themselves as part of this educational training machine.
Yeah, I would love to say that I think it's like the, frontline managers' jobs to be really good at doing development plans for all their people. I'm not.
That's an ideal world, isn't it? But in the real world,
I also live in the real world.
Stuff to do. Yeah.
So our approach is, the direct managers need to be responsible for all of the skills that the people need to have to do their jobs, all of the safety training, all of the, specific job skill training, because that's what they have control over. And that's what they sort of need for expectations of doing the job. And then the HR team really plays a much more key role in sort of driving the development plans for the individuals. So, they're the ones that are more in charge of like organizational design and doing some of that work and wrapping it around the entire workforce. So there's some continuity in how those plans are designed and delivered. Yes. And it doesn't get as fractured as it might when you push it all the way down to the individual manager level.
And I wonder about your own experience, because you've got an interesting career behind you and you've worked at different levels and you're the boss now. Do you look back and get lessons from the way you were helped or maybe not helped at different times? What sort of support did you get in your career?
Yeah, so I'm very intrinsically motivated. I'm very curious and I'm a little distracted sometimes, but I'm always learning something new. Yeah. So I'm probably one of those people that would have left companies. I mean, I grew up in our family business and, my dad was not a good teacher. And I cover some of that in the first book that I wrote, but I've been fortunate enough to have had, and I think it kind of started with some good counselors. I went through some counseling and then I moved into finding mentors and coaches. I have one coach in particular who works with large multinational companies. His portfolio of clients is incredible. And I've said to him before, why do you like working with me? I mean, I can't pay those kinds of fees. And yet you come back, you're fascinated by my little company. And he says, you actually listen to what I tell you. Mm. And then I check in 6 months later, you've done something about it. Like you act on it and you see the results. And so I think going out into to the world and seeking those people that will ask the difficult questions, like, why are you thinking like this? And do you really think this is going to work? And what are the pitfalls? And I really appreciate people who have dug in like that. I had one coach, I was complaining about some dynamics on my executive team. And she said to me, wow, I can understand that's a real problem for you. If you were talking to your daughter, how would you handle that? I'm like, I would do X, Y, Z. I had a very quick answer. She said, so you have the tools.
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, I guess you're right.
Yeah. And it just makes me think, when people are hiring new starters, should they be looking for the good learners? Because, sometimes we look for people that have already got evidence of things and they've got all these wonderful accolades behind them. But maybe we're missing a trick if we don't also bring in the people that are ready to learn new things and they're going to be part of this dynamic process. We're going to help them learn, but they're going to want to learn as well.
I would say yes and. I mean, those are always great people that end up in your organization, and they just help you get better almost from day one. They play in that gear. Mm. However, I think what we've discovered over the years is there's also a lot of gold in people who have never been given the opportunity to learn. When you take that level of interest in them and you're like, hey, what would you like to do? They're like, nobody's ever asked them that question. And once you start presenting them with this, like, we're really interested in your success, not just in how well you do this job, but your overall success. Mm. What you start to unleash is really pretty interesting. I mean, the level of engagement that we have right now in our business because of this mindset starting at our executive team it's the most dynamic place it's ever been since I took over the company 30 years ago. Fantastic. It's great. But I think a lot of people get comfortable, right? I mean, they're like, I got a good job. I got my education. I like my life. It's not horrible. Yes. But when you start building a culture with sort of this expectation that we're going to be a learning organization and we're going to go out into the world, whether it's our customers, our employees, or even our suppliers or the community around us, with a level of curiosity and learning more and interested in solving problems, you build a different culture.
Well, it's music to our ears at Mindtools. We're very much into this idea of learning organizations, and it's such a powerful book, I think, for our audience. And I reckon, for people everywhere. It sounds like you're hopeful. You're obviously hopeful for Butterball's future. Are you hopeful for the future of talent everywhere, that we'll together somehow we'll beat this retention trap and we'll see the light?
I'll tell you what, Jonathan, here's what I'm hopeful for, because you guys are in this business. You probably know a lot of employers that do these kinds of things really well and don't brag about it. I hope that enough small to mid-market companies figure these things out, that we really are able to have an impact on our enterprises, our people, and our communities. You know what? We are going to be faced with headlines of the doom and gloom, and we're going to be faced with, the large Fortune 100, Fortune 500 companies that really struggle with being people-centric, and they are almost 100% what I call enterprise-centric, at the cost of not really caring about the individual. And I think that's our competitive advantage. I'd love to see small and mid-market companies lose this fear of losing talent and come together to build a more robust talent system. And I think it's going to be better for all of us. This is a problem we get to solve. Like, we are in the driver's seat as the employers. I want this to be like, Tom Sawyer whitewashing the fence. Like, he had to do that job and he turned it into I get to do this job. And then he got paid to have other people do it for him. We have to look at this, what we see as a talent problem, and turn it into this opportunity to really build a robust talent system, because we get to do that.
Well, it's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you today, Mark. And it's a great book to read, packed with research, insights, personal experiences, as you've heard, and practical steps to beating the retention trap and becoming the best sort of manager and employer, developing your people for their work now, as well as with their futures in mind. You've painted a very positive picture of what this can do for businesses, and may your own business keep thriving as an example for the rest of us, and may all of our employers be listening to this episode, ready to invest in us and our talent.
Yeah.
We'll put links to Mark's book, The Retention Trap, and to Mark himself in the show notes, along with some complementary resources from Mindtools. For example, we've got the Manager Skills Assessment, a diagnostic tool that focuses on 12 key manager skills, and it helps managers understand their strengths, uncover their development areas, and take action with confidence, all built on research, and it's got clear steps to improvement. Plus, there's the Mindtools Manager Skill Builder, 36 targeted courses covering all the 12 essential skills, tailored to meet the unique needs of every manager. And it's adaptive learning, so it personalizes each pathway. Find out more in the show notes or at mindtools.com. I will return next week with another problem and another expert guest to take away at least some of the pain. For now, from Mark Peters, Pain Points, and from Jonathan Hancock, it's goodbye.
Thank you, Jonathan. This was a fantastic conversation. I so appreciated being on your show today.